Hi, I'm Caden, here with my brother,
Cal,
and you're watching Eating W's.
eat the W.
That's a W. Let's eat one. Let's eat one. That's a W.
On this episode of Eating W's, we have our NFL Divisional Round prediction for the 2024-2025 playoffs. You heard that correctly. Divisional Round predictions, no wild card recap. Cal and I kind of talked about it right before recording this. And if you look back on wild card weekend, out of the 6 games, there was one game that was even really worth a damn, being the Commanders at the Bucks, which was a hell of a game. But it was the only game that was really even close per se. I think it was the only game that was one possession. And 2 of the other games included both of our favorite teams, the Vikings and the Packers, losing. So that just didn't necessarily sound like a fun recap, to say the least. So we decided to just cut that out. Instead of doing a recap Friday and prediction Saturday, we're just going to put this episode, the one you're watching right now, up on Friday morning. And I'm sure throughout our predictions for this divisional round, we will slightly talk back on last week's games, especially for the winning teams, and maybe even a little bit for the losing teams in the Vikings and Packers situation. But nonetheless, thought it'd be a lot better to just do this prediction episode. So since there wasn't really any major injuries, some minor ones that knocked guys out just for the games, but nothing major that's going to sweep them for the rest of the playoffs or anything of the sort, we will jump straight into an update on Cal and I's head-to-head pick'em game. Callan had a lot of ground to make up coming into the playoffs, and so far, he has not really done that.
Nope.
Last week, I got 4 of the games correct, meaning I got 16 total points since they were all worth 4 points, and Callan got 2 of the games correct, giving him a total of 8 points. Our overall totals now with regular season plus our playoff scores is now 214 for me and 182 for Callan. So over a 30-point gap at this point. So if Callan wants to be able to get the Super Bowl win with that 20 points, he better make up some ground in the next 2 rounds. Make up some ground starting right now with the first matchup of the divisional round weekend, which will take place Saturday at 3:30 Central Time. We have the 4-seed Texans heading to the 1-seed Kansas City Chiefs, and we start here by agreeing. We both have the Chiefs in this one. Now, the Chiefs and the Texans just played, and I'm pretty sure just played in Arrowhead like week 16 or 17, I think that was. Yeah. So we just got to see this matchup not too long ago, and it was a matchup that the Chiefs won. And that was after a long season. That was without Hollywood Brown, if I'm not mistaken. So now you come into this matchup when the game means so much more. You are just absolutely in the comfort zone of Patrick Mahomes, to say the least. I mean, this guy lives in January and February. He lives in the playoffs. It's where he makes his money. It's where he does his best work. And then on the flip side of that coin, you have the Texans, where they are a very good team, but they're a very young team. They did make the playoffs last year, but I believe they got kind of destroyed in the wild card, if I'm not mistaken. If not, like, lost in divisional. I know they didn't make it to the championship game. So some playoff experience, but just not a lot. And a very young team with, of course, a very young quarterback in sophomore C.J. Stroud. And not only a young and a little less playoff experienced team, but a very beat up team right now. I mean, you got some big names out. Stephon Diggs has been out for a while. A couple of the guys on their defense have been in and out for a while. CJ Stroud is playing, but not at 100%. He's got some kind of nicks and bruises holding him back. So this is kind of just an easy matchup for the Chiefs. I could see the Texans maybe giving them a little bit of a run for their money, but it's not going to be like last week when they had Justin Herbert tossing them 4 picks to keep them in the game. Patrick Mahomes might throw kind of a dumb pick here or there, but he's not going to throw 4 interceptions in one game, especially in a playoff game. So they're not going to get that opportunity, which could keep them in the game. And I just see the Chiefs pretty well running away with this one in Arrowhead.
Yeah, I agree with that pretty much 100%. I like the Chiefs to really run away with this one. Like you said, they just beat the Texans a few weeks ago, and that was not even a close matchup either. If I'm not mistaken, I believe it was 27-13.
Yeah, something along those lines.
Maybe 27-16, but it was not a close matchup. The Chiefs, who were beaten down and actually were looking more weaker heading into that matchup, were able to come away with the win. So now they're a much stronger team. and much more healthy after a week off of rest due to their number one seed, uh, they're going to come in much stronger and just overwhelm the Texans. Patrick Mahomes, who didn't necessarily put up MVP numbers this year, but he could still win the playoff MVP and Super Bowl MVP because, like you said, that's just where he performs his best. That's his MO, is to come out and perform in the playoffs. And I expect him and Travis Kelce to really have that connection going and for the Chiefs to be able to run away with this one. And I'd say a 2-possession game.
Yeah, I like it. One kind of fun note I wanted to make before we moved on is I could see this being a close first quarter or maybe even first half because Patrick Mahomes might be a little rusty heading into this game. A little fact I heard the other day is he has not thrown a pass since they played the Raiders not the Raiders, played the Ravens, I believe it was, on Christmas. Yeah. That was the last time he played in a game. So that's been, literally almost pushing a month at this point. I mean, you're talking 2.5, 3 weeks right there. So he might be a tad rusty heading into the game, but on the flip side of that, he's going to be healthy. He's going to be well rested. He's going to be coming in with a vengeance, wanting to be the first quarterback ever to three-peat, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe I'm off on that.
But Packers did it with Star, but they weren't Super Bowls. They were world championships.
They were world championships. So first person in the Super Bowl era to three-peat. Yeah. That's a pretty damn cool thing to have under your belt. So I think he comes in with a vengeance and destroys this game. So now moving on to the Saturday game, which will be taking place Saturday at 7 Central Time, the night game. We have the last remaining non-divisional winner with the 6th seed Washington Commanders heading to Detroit to take on the 1 seed Detroit Lions. And we agree again, but not how you'd think. We both agree on the Commanders with this one. Now, I know that this is quite an upset, especially considering it is a rookie quarterback leading this Commanders team. But man, did Jaden Daniels look good last week against the Bucs. And more than anything, did this team just look like a good, strong unit last week against the Bucs? I mean, the Bucs were a really good team, and it was in Tampa Bay. There was so much going for the Bucs in that game, and the Commanders were able to come in, and they just controlled the game. There was times where they maybe lost the lead or maybe didn't look as sharp as other parts of the game. But if you watch that game, I felt like the whole time they just seemed like they were in control. They just kind of seemed like confident that they were going to win. I mean, even on that last drive, Jaden Daniels, which he's done so many times this year, was so calm, cool, and collective. He just kind of went out there. He did what he needed to do. He got him in field goal range. And not only did he get him in field goal range, he took about 4 minutes off the clock to get him in field goal range, which is so impressive because it gave no chance of the Bucs pulling any miracles and getting anything done once they got the ball. And then the doink to Detroit is what it's kind of been coined so far. Of course, that was fun to watch the ball doink in. If you watch Jaden Daniels, I don't know if you saw the video, but it's funny. He doesn't even smile. He just like looks over at like the people who are all celebrating. It's just kind of like, yeah, like I knew he was going to make it. Like it was just it had so much not even arrogance, but just confidence. Like he just knew they were going to win. So it's really cool to see that from somebody so young, really impressive. And I think he continues that impressive streak into this game. I think that the Commanders will play really well, like I said. Of course, I don't think that they're going to play bad and just steal a win. I mean, it's the playoffs. There's not really a situation where you steal a win once you get this far into the playoffs. But I don't think that the Lions are quite as strong as they've put up. I mean, they've played really well, don't get me wrong, but they just have so many injuries. They have so many things kind of going against them right now. But they do have 2 things that are going in their favor, and that is Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn. And really that coaching staff in general is just so good. So it doesn't matter who they throw out on the field. It's going to be a hell of a game, and this one's going to be way closer. I don't really see a blowout leaning either way. But I do see the Commanders coming out on top.
Yeah, I like the Commanders in this one and probably the upset of the playoffs because, like you said, Detroit is coming in very beat up. Even though they did have the number 1 seed rest, they still have a number of players on injured reserve. And even though it is likely that David Montgomery plays, he won't be 100% because he's still playing with a torn MCL, which still has to be pretty painful. So I think it's just a pain management thing. And so we'll see how much he really does play. But I like the Commanders in this one because of, well, Jaden Daniels. and really his performance all season long. Now, it's not been an MVP performance, but it's been an offensive rookie of the year performance. And you forget that he had all those starts at Arizona State. So he's really come in like Bo Nix and had a lot of starts under his belt in college. So he has been to multiple schools like Bo Nix and had multiple starts like Bo Nix. And you can really tell that the difference between the quarterbacks that had multiple starts and the ones that didn't have multiple starts, like Anthony Richardson, who only had, I believe, 10 starts in college.
like barely a whole season.
So you can just tell the talent difference is much better and the confidence level is much better for both of those quarterbacks. Now, we're talking about Jaden Daniels here because the Broncos got beat, but Jaden Daniels has put together really one of the more fantastic rookie seasons that I've seen in recent memory. And really, that whole coaching staff for the Commanders has come together quite well, with Cliff Kingsbury being the ultimate offensive coordinator and Ron Rivera, or not Ron Rivera, the backwards
Dan Quinn.
Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn, not Ron Rivera anymore. It's Dan Quinn there. And he has really put together quite the defensive performance and really shown that he can lead that defense, where they have really shown to be quite an under the radar defense. Really only led by with star players as Jonathan Allen, who's their star defensive tackle. But outside of that, maybe Marshawn Lattimore, I can't really think of many players on that defense. So they're kind of a no-name under the radar defense. So because of their team performance, I think that they're going to overwhelm the Lions on offense. And I expect the Lions to actually falter in a couple of fourth down conversions, where I think that because of the rest and the rust, they won't be quite in sync on their fourth down conversions and their aggressiveness. And I look for the aggressiveness to bite them in the butt and bite them in the kneecap for the Lions, and look for the Commanders to walk away on it with a field goal at the end of the game.
Aggressiveness to bite them in the kneecap. I like it. Yeah, it's the recipe to beating the Lions. It really is. If you can stop them on fourth down and maybe take advantage of a fourth down or two of your own, your chances of winning just absolutely skyrocket. It's astronomical.
It's going to be more like a Madden game because both of these coaches have gone for it the most.
Love going for it on fourth.
And have also gone for the most 2-point conversions. So it really is going to be like an old Madden game where you just got two players winging it down the field, going for it every time. No punts, no field goals. It's going to be an exciting matchup.
You can bet on anything nowadays. Bet on the under on punts. No doubt about it. This game will be absolute offensive star-studded. So moving on to our two Sunday games for the divisional round slate, starting with the Sunday afternoon game, which will be being played at 2 o'clock Central Time. We have the second NFC matchup with the 4-seed Rams heading to Philadelphia to take on the 2-seed Eagles. And for the first time in this episode, we disagree. Callan has the Eagles. I have the Rams in this one. Now, I flipped that. Sorry. I put this incorrectly. I'm going to have to flip that. I flipped that.
I was thinking that.
I put it correctly on our little sheet right here, and I flipped it in my head. Let me flip that again. Callan has the Rams in this one, and I have the Eagles. Now, I said that and got mixed up because I almost did take the Eagles in this one. It was so close. But then just before I kind of locked it in and decided I wanted to go with the Rams, I remembered that the last time these two teams faced was on Sunday Night Football. I can't remember what week, but it was about middle of the season, and Saquon Barkley went off for 255 rushing yards. And I know that lightning never strikes twice. He's not going to have another 200-plus yard game. But if you put over 255 rushing yards the last time they played, and then, to be honest, this might sound kind of contradictory, but the way the Packers were pretty well able to shut him down last week, and he had a quiet week last week, I think that those are both an absolute recipe for Saquon Barkley to take over in this game. Don't see him having 200, but I do see him having at least about 150, somewhere in that area. And I think that when Saquon Barkley is moving, of course, this whole offense is moving. Because, when you can't stop the run, you can't really stop anything, because that opens up the play action game, that opens the vertical passing game, and those are two things that this Eagles team is also really good at. The Rams defense did very good against the Vikings last week. There is, of course, no doubt about that. They tied the playoff record for sacks. They pretty much guaranteed that Sam Darnold won't be signing a contract here anywhere soon. I mean, I like Sam Darnold, but really the last 2 weeks he kind of guaranteed he won't be signing a big contract here anywhere soon. But I digress. That's a story for a different day. But nonetheless, I don't think that Rams defense is anywhere near as good as the Vikings offense made them look and Sam Darnold made them look. And the big thing that they were able to take advantage of over the Vikings and that made their defense look so good last week was the pass rush. And that was against a very beat up, a very off Minnesota Vikings offensive line. This Eagles offensive line is not the same offensive line. This Eagles offensive line is the dead opposite. It is always on. It is really healthy right now. They have a elite running back, like I just mentioned, in Saquon Barkley. So I think that the Rams defense is going to be night and day difference from the wild card to the divisional. And I see Saquon Barkley, as I mentioned, going for at least 150. I think I see Jalen Hurts pushing 300, maybe in that 250 range with a couple of touchdowns. And to be honest, I'd love to see the Rams win. I don't really want to see the Eagles go to another NFC championship game, but I do think it happens here.
Yeah, it could, but I am going to go with the Rams on this one because of their offensive performance of Kyren Williams, Cooper Kupp, and Puka Nacua. And because of that offensive trio, I expect them to be able to score a lot of points against this Philadelphia Eagles defense, where really they were able to counter or capitalize on a lot of turnovers from Green Bay last week, where they had 4 total turnovers, the Philadelphia defense did, including one on special teams, where I think that was a difference in the game. When you have 3 interceptions and a fumble and no turnovers on offense for the Eagles, then that's just an easy way to win a game, and they were able to walk away with that one. But as far as this Rams games go, I expect the defense to actually be able to shut down Saquon Barkley, and I expect them to maybe watch some film of the Packers and see what they did to shut down Saquon Barkley and see what it is that maybe is a possible weakness for him. But really, there aren't many weaknesses for him. All you can really do is contain him and hope for the best. But Jalen Hurts did not impress me this last week, and I expect him to have maybe a more mediocre game and look for the Eagles to have a few turnovers and look for the Rams to capitalize on those turnovers. And when they do, it'll be Kyren Williams, Puka Nacua, or Cooper Kupp, because Matthew Stafford has formed quite the dynamic offense around those guys, and they are able to score a lot of points when needed. And I expect the Rams to have to score a lot of points this week against this Eagles defense.
Yeah, there's a lot of good matchups this week, and I think with the kind of marquee matchup that we're going to talk about next, this might be almost silly to say, but I think this Rams at Eagles game could easily be the game of the week. This is going to be a really fun game to watch, which usually when I say that, it ends up being a terrible game and one team just absolutely destroys the other. But I really think that this one could be a good one. Speaking of good ones, we have that marquee matchup I just mentioned with the Sunday night game, which will be played at 5:30 Central Time on Sunday night. We have the AFC secondary matchup of the 3-seed Baltimore Ravens heading to Buffalo to take on the 2-seed Bills, and we finish this one by disagreeing again. Callan has the Ravens. I have the Bills in this one. Actually said it correctly this time. I took the Bills in this one. I feel like I've said this a lot of times. I feel like I'm a little bit of a broken record, but I mean, it's a good bet to take. So I have the Rams in this one because of one man and one man only, and it is Josh Allen. This guy has just been on such a roll. He is having the year of his life, both on and off the field. So what would make that year better than to be the Super Bowl winner, be the Super Bowl MVP? And that starts in this game. I mean, last week they had the 7-seed Broncos, which was an awesome story to see them make it. It was awesome to see Bo Nix make it to the playoffs, but they just absolutely dominated them. And I think everybody kind of saw that coming. I don't think that was really too shocking to anybody. So this time around is when it really starts. This is when the playoff starts for the Bills. They have the home field advantage. They have the Bills Mafia behind them. You know they'll be out there in the snow breaking tables for a game like this. So I think that the Ravens do come in with a lot of momentum. I think they're very good right now. In fact, I was talking with my buddy earlier today, and the Ravens are favored right now.
Mm-hmm.
The Bills are -1 right now in the point differential. So that was crazy to see for me. And I think that more than anything should just motivate the Bills even more. I mean, people are doubting them now. They're the higher seed. It's in Buffalo, and people are saying they're going to lose. They need to prove them wrong there. So this one's going to be the matchup of the AFC for sure, and could easily be the matchup of the divisional round weekend. And I think that both teams are going to play very well, but I think that Josh Allen in this offense is able to pull it out in a shootout. The Ravens could take advantage of the fact that the Bills don't quite have the star-studded receiver room, and they have a really good secondary with guys like Marlon Humphrey and Kyle Hamilton. So that's kind of one huge benefit that I see that the Ravens have. But everywhere else, I think that they're very equal, or the Bills kind of take the cake in that. So overall, I think that the Bills are able to win a close game.
Yeah, I disagree with this one. I like the Ravens in this one, and I like it because of that Ravens running game. And really, I think the winner of this game is going to be the MVP of the league, whether it's Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen. Whichever quarterback puts on the more dynamic performance locks up that MVP for the season. And so I expect Lamar Jackson to go out there and have another dynamic performance. And I expect for him to go over 300 total yards because I think he'll have to. And then what's likely going to be a shootout style game. And look for Derrick Henry to have to go over 100 yards, where this is really time to use Derrick Henry, where they've saved him in games in the past and maybe not ran him as hard. And especially maybe even last week where he didn't have a full slate of the game. Look for him to play the whole game this week, and look for him to have a dominant performance, because that Bills rushing defense is their weak point. And because of that, I expect the Ravens to be able to run all over the Bills, and I expect the Bills to be able to run all over the Ravens also. So I think it'll be a very exciting rushing attack early on, and then give away to the two quarterbacks to finish it off, and what will be a back and forth, very exciting matchup. But I think Lamar Jackson pulls it out in the end.
Yeah, I know. This is a really fun matchup overall, not only on the grand scheme of thing, but if you kind of look at it under a microscope, two things I wanted to compare is, of course, weather is going to play a huge factor in this game. I'm not sure exactly what the weather is supposed to be in Buffalo, if there is supposed to actually be snow, but you're still in Buffalo. It's still January. It's going to be cold as hell, let's be honest. So if you look at these teams, it's really going to matter, just like you mentioned with the run. And these teams are both two very good rushing teams. I think James Cook actually leads the league in rushing touchdowns, if I'm not mistaken. But it's really interesting because they're two very different running styles. While you have the Ravens, you got guys like Derrick Henry, and then a really good middle of your offensive line, which leads to a more vertical, in the middle between the tackles running style. And then on the Bills, you have the opposite, where you have James Cook, who is a much smaller, faster, more agile guy, and your strength is on the outside, the tackles of your offensive line, which leads to a lot more of a horizontal kind of spread the field run game. So it's funny that both of these teams really thrive in the run game and in the pass game. They're both just really good offenses in general, but they both really thrive in the run game, but in such different ways, and they open up their playbooks and their passing in such different ways with those run games. So that's kind of a fun little microcosm to look at of this game, but nonetheless, it's going to be a hell of a game. There's no doubt about it at the end of the day. So that was our NFL divisional round predictions for the 2024-2025 playoffs. Thank you all so much for watching this episode, and make sure you stay tuned in until next Friday morning when we have our NFC and AFC championship game predictions. And we'll just do it like this week where we didn't have the reactions. We'll just kind of talk about the prior week games during our prediction of the next week. So thank you all so much for watching. Appreciate all the extra support as of lately. Really do appreciate it. Love seeing it. And make sure you stay tuned in until next week when we talk about those championship games. But until then, don't forget
to eat the W.